Thank you, Josh. Hello, everyone. My name is Marty Zhu. I am the VP of Interpreter Success at Cymo. Cymo is an interpretation technology company that exists to serve the entire language access value chain. That means we support interpreters with tools that help in preparation, live performance, and post-project closeout. We help institutions train the next generation of interpreters more effectively. We improve how audiences access multilingual content, whether on-site or remote. We live in a time of technological change. It is no secret that there are companies out there that are selling AI interpretation services, some even asking interpreters to act as QA for those engines. Understandably, this has given rise to concern within our industry. Where there are legitimate use cases where AI interpretation can help, it is our experience that human interpretation will continue to be valuable in the new era, as long as we adapt. We've already seen these phenomena in art, where AI-generated art sells at a fraction of the cost, but the truly quality human art maintains value or even increase in value. We think interpretation will be the same as long as we focus on what makes human interpretation different from machines: our ability to infuse emotion with narrative storytelling. Cymo Note is built on this core belief that technology should amplify, not replace the human. So we asked, what makes machine do better? Memory, precision, consistency. What can humans do best? Adapt, express emotion, build context, and tell stories. Cymo Note combines these strengths. It remembers for you, it helps you organize, and keeps your mind free to focus on meaning, nuance, and delivery. And today I'm going to show you how you can use Cymo Note in every part of your interpretation workflow so that you can be better prepared in less time, adapt to the content faster as it happens, and ease the burden of memorization so that you can focus on your delivery. By the end of this section, you will be ready to use it with confidence. Let's take a look. First things first, if you haven't installed Cymo Note yet, go to our website at www.cymo.io, find Note, and follow the installation videos, one for PC and one for Mac. Both links are included in the materials shared with this video. Let's start with taking a close look at Cymo Note's interface. We're going to start from the upper right-hand corner and go counterclockwise. This is your account icon. Once you click it, you'll see all the important information, including how many credit you have and how much time that is based on the type of engine that you select. You can also buy credits or membership here, and there's a whole host of other information that you can take your time to go over. Next, we have this time ticker, which will change based on the engine you select. We also have a gear icon, and this is the settings menu. In here, you can select your languages, you can choose the display mode, and you can also have two very important auto functions, which we will go over in detail later when we go into the specific scenarios. Coming back, we have a text bar where you can enter manually. We can say convenient, hit return. Convenient will show up as the machine translation. We have a force replace menu. We will go over this later. We also have the most important glossary, and this is one of the key functions we'll spend plenty of time in. We also have the project menu where you can save your current project or open an existing project. Next, let's look at the bottom left corner. Here we have the engine selection menu. You can select the engines, and currently there are 3 engines that is usable in Cymo Note, the app version, and Cymo ASR is only available on the web version, but nonetheless, that is the 4th option that you can have. We also have the microphone select, we have the language toggle, and we have the start captioning. On the far right corner, we have this ellipsis icon, and when you click it, you can adjust the font size, the line height. You can also import text, export transcript, and finally, you can clear all pages. Now that we're familiar with the Cymo Note interface, let's get it set up for our job. First, you want to go into settings and set it up based on your language and the type of job that is coming up. First, you can see here, there's the language to select, and you can select whatever language you like to choose. Then you want to come down to display mode, and this, although not very obvious, is going to determine how the interface behaves, and you can use it for Cymo or Consec scenario. Scrolling is exactly how it sounds. The words will scroll upward from the bottom, and that's usually used for a Cymo scenario. If you change to flipping, that means that there are pages that you can flip, and that is more conducive to consecutive interpretation. All right, now I promised you earlier that we're going to go over two very important functions in here. First is the auto read system clipboard. Now say I'm going to copy a term from somewhere else, and this is going to help me during my preparation. I'm going to highlight the term and just do your normal copy. And this will allow Cymo Note, even without being selected, to automatically source that term and have the machine translation for you. So that's kind of a handy function when you're trying to prepare. The second important function is auto stop after 10 minutes of silence. And we know that oftentimes after a long and tiring job, you just want to go rest. And many of our users have reported that it would be nice to have an auto stop. If after 10 minutes, Cymo Note doesn't detect any sound coming in, the recognition will automatically stop. That's a good way to save you some credits. Now, if you're setting up Cymo Note for a consecutive job, there's two more things that you can do to make your job easier. Both of them involves going down to this ellipsis button right here, and you can set up consecutive layout, consecutive bookmark, and drawing mode. Say, for example, I'm going to dictate out of my microphone. Every time I stop captioning, I can drop a timestamp here. And let's go on. Test, test, 1, 2. I'm speaking more about Cymo Note's consecutive setup. And once I stop again, I can drop another timestamp and press this button to go to the last one. You're going to go to the one before. And you can imagine if you have a lot of pages, this could be quite handy. The other important consecutive function is obviously this hand-drawn. Now, I'm on a MacBook, so I can't really write very well on my trackpad. But if you're on an iPad or on a tablet, you can actually take your consecutive notes here and even reference it back to the transcript on the left side. So that is the consecutive setup for Cymo Note. All right. Now that you see that I've brought Cymo Note back to the original Cymo setup, since most of our users are using Cymo Note with their simultaneous interpretation jobs, let's take a look at how you will begin using Cymo Note to prepare for a particular job. Say, for example, your client has sent over a few files, and one of them is a Word document about the upcoming meeting. And I have one prepared right here. There are ways that you can actually import them into Cymo Note, so you can begin prepping the glossary, which is our most important function here, with the materials that the client have shared with you. Currently, there are two ways that you can get such information into Cymo Note. The first and the most convenient way is that if it's a document file, a Word document, then you can simply drag it. And I'm going to drag this out of a folder on another desktop of mine, and you can just drag and drop. As you can see here, the information has been imported into Cymo Note. And now I can begin highlighting terms, start them to add them to my glossary. Highlight Ministry of Justice. Here. Maybe trade agreement. And all of these will be added into our glossary. There's also another more convenient way in the case that you're working with web pages. What you can do is simply copy and paste. Say, for example, I have a Wikipedia page open, and I can copy it and then paste it into Cymo Note. And you can see that all the information here is imported into Cymo Note, and I can begin, say, for example, I'm going to highlight anti-unfair competition law and add it to my glossary. Designation process, add it to the glossary, and you can see that once it's in the glossary, it's going to prompt it whenever it comes up again. And another way that I like to get materials into Cymo Note is actually to find relevant content on, say, a website like YouTube, and find speeches that are relevant to the content, and actually practice with it. And you can use Cymo Note along with that practice while populating the glossary in preparation for the actual job. Let's say, for example, I have a meeting on Arctic responses to climate change here. And I know I've used this video quite a few times, and I think it is a perfect example with when there's a lot of dense material and we're really Cymo Note can shine. And first, what I need to do is to change sourcing the audio from Cymo Virtual Cable. Please refer to the installation tutorial that will be shared, and that is included in the information shared along with this video. Okay, so I have set it up so that Cymo is sourcing from my own computer. And what you do is that enable captioning and start playing the video.
The most sensitive of these is what is occurring in the Arctic. Indeed, because of various feedback mechanisms in the
And
Arctic,
I could be practicing along with this information while highlighting the terms that I need.
Ice reduces the amount of sunlight reflected and absorbs more incoming solar radiation. The Arctic is already warming at 4 times faster than the global average rate. We've already lost half of the summer sea ice cover.
Okay, so that is one of my favorite ways to get information into Cymo Note while also practicing the content along as well. Finally, if this is a job that you have done before and you have in the past worked with Cymo Note and you have a Cymo Note project file, then you can simply import it or open it through the project folder. And here we go, you have the save, open, and share option. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to open from file. You can also open from cloud. There's 5 projects that you can save onto cloud at a time. Unfortunately, we cannot have more because we want to keep the cost of Cymo Note as low as possible. Having more projects will need more file spaces to save those files. So for now, I'm going to open from file. And all you need to do is drag it in, or you can select file from a folder. I have it prepared right here. So I'm just going to simply drag it in here. And this is a file on circular economy, and it's going to ask you to open, continue. And you can see that even the previous script that I had has been imported here. And you can see all the terms associated with that particular project has been imported, and it's ready to go. What you do want to be careful is that if you had terms here in the glossary before the import, that's going to overwrite it. So if you're previously working on something, make sure you save it. And to save it is the same way. You go to the project folder and you save as a file. You can name it and save it to whichever folder you would like to have. Now, in the case where you might have already prepared a significant amount of linguistic assets already in the past, say for example in Excel, I have good news. Cymo Note is also compatible with Excel. There's a few things you want to be careful of though, is that first, if you have multiple tables like this particular one I have, it will only import the first table. And I know that's not the most optimal solution, but there are other ways to work around this. The other thing is that you want to make sure that you don't have any blank rows on top. With that, you can just import this terminology sheet into Cymo Note. And the way you do this is to go into glossary here. And in this line, there is the import button on the upper right-hand side. There's delete all, import, and export. And you click import. All you need to do is to drag that terminology sheet in Excel in here. And you can see all the terms are entered. A few things to note is that first of all, you might see the first header that is in here. So make sure you delete that. And you might see some terms that are undefined. The undefined here basically means that in the original terminology sheet, there was nothing there. So it will do that. In this particular case, I'm just going to delete it. But that is how you can import your existing linguistic assets that is stored in Excel into Cymo Note. Now, in the case that you want to enter the other tables also into Cymo Note, don't worry, even though if you import the file directly, you will only have the first tab. There's the traditional copy and paste method. And the way you do this is that you copy the terms that are in the Excel spreadsheet. You go to glossary, focus on the 2 icons on the upper left corner. This is the table format, and it's in the columns and row format that we're familiar with. But there's another one here, which is the tab separated format. And what you can do is you can open a new line and simply paste the terminology on the second tab into Cymo Note. And you can move back into the tablature view, and you can see that all the terms all the way up to here, you'll have in the Cymo Note glossary, and it will be recognized. And that actually works with any kind of table format. That includes Google Spreadsheet, or even a table generated from ChatGPT or any of the AI-generated engines. So that's a small tip to even further enhance your preparation routine. And that is how you can import existing linguistic assets into Cymo Note. There's one more thing I wanted to share about how to populate your force replace rules. And this usually happens when we all know that AI make mistakes. And one of our key features is to be able to replace those mistakes so that in the future, in case that happens again, it will likely display the right term. Well, of course, we know that the system is not perfect, but this is one of the ways that we can reduce the amount of misrepresented terms or misrecognized terms while we're working. Hello, this is Cymo Note. It is a computer-assisted interpretation tool designed to help interpreters prepare, deliver, and archive their linguistic assets. Okay, as you can see here, our product, Cymo Note, is misrecognized by the engine. And that happens quite often because the engine doesn't know our product. So what you can do is highlight this, click Force Replace. Let's correct it to Cymo Note. And let's try again. Cymo Note is a computer-assisted interpretation tool that can help interpreters prepare for their content, prompt terms so that they can focus on their delivery, and archive their terms after they're done. Okay, now you can see that Cymo Note, even though was misrecognized before, once we have the force replace rule in place, the program will automatically replace it when a similar misrecognized term appears. Now, I do need to add that this is not perfect because we are doing a rough term match, and sometimes variations in accent, pronunciation can throw off the force replace recognition algorithm. However, it is a helpful tool to help fix some of the misrecognized mistakes that the engine have. Now, let's return to this faithful video, and I want to demonstrate how you would normally work with Cymo Note while you're interpreting. In this particular case, I want to highlight the OneClick to Search function. It's basically just a double tap, which will open a drop-down that will show you the machine-translated version into the target language of that particular term. I also wanted to share the highlight to prompt machine translation and the star to add function. So let's begin.
4 times faster than the global average rate. We've already lost half of the summer sea ice cover, and we have evidence that we are approaching a tipping point for the disintegration of the Greenland ice sheet. The melting of the Greenland ice sheet has an effect on the circulation of the ocean and atmosphere, and we're already seeing slowing of that overturning circulation in the Atlantic.
You can see I'm adding the terms.
And if we continue to have loss of Arctic summer sea ice, we could, because of that reduction in reflection, add the equivalent of 1,000 gigatons of CO2 warming equivalent, with additional albedo loss and increased warming from additional loss of snow and ice cover. And additional feedbacks in the Arctic include methane and CO2 release from permafrost, as well as other methane reserves such as hydrates.
Also adding
so we want to slow
permafrost here.
down warming and buy time and reduce risk of crossing these tipping points. While cutting CO2 again,
all right,
is
let's stop the speech.
essential.
And this is how Cymo Note can help you get accustomed to the material faster and focus more on crafting your delivery. Here I'd like to add a note on confidentiality. At Cymo, we base our design decisions on the existing needs of industry non-disclosure practices, and that is why our transcripts and our glossaries are all saved local and not in the cloud. The cloud project folder is meant to transfer information between your different devices, say for example, your tablet that you use for consecutive interpretation and your laptop that you use for remote Cymo interpreting. And it is meant to be a temporary holding place, and interpreters have full control over what to leave in the folder as well as when to delete them. There's also another question about cloud versus local ASR engines. The decision between the two is based on performance, portability, as well as ease of use. While indeed a local ASR engine is completely offline, they often are very difficult to maintain, very difficult to use, and often suffers from performance issues. And since performance is important for computer-assisted interpreting, we have decided to use cloud ASR engines for now. What I do want to add is that these cloud engines, these third-party cloud engines, are governed by the same enterprise-level security that is common in enterprise cloud services industry. Say, for example, if you like Microsoft ASR, then you can expect the same level of attention, the same privacy and security practices common among all of their solutions, such as their Office suite, their cloud drive, as well as their other communications platforms. Finally, what we're going to do is we're going to save the linguistic assets that we accumulated. There's two ways to do this. One way, if you want to export it back into the Excel spreadsheet, you can export. And what it does is that it saves as an XLSX file. And this is when you can save the file, open it, and cut and paste it back into your original Excel spreadsheet. The other way to do this is to just simply highlight, copy, and paste it into your original Excel spreadsheet. Lastly, if you have accumulated a significant amount of linguistic assets and you have force replace rules, and you would really like to keep this as a Cymo Note project, you can always click on the project folder, save as file. You can save it locally on your computer, or you can save to the cloud. And again, you can have up to 5. As you can see here, I have it quite full, and I do consistently use them as well. So I'm not going to overwrite any one of them, but you can save as a new project here. Finally, there's one more thing I want to talk with everyone about, and that is something that some of our fellow interpreters have brought up, and that is whether Cymo Note will become a crutch. In fact, from our experience, if you rely on Cymo Note 100% of the time, it is actually very mentally taxing. And that is because you're trying to do sight translation while listening to the speaker so that you can make sure that the transcript is correct. And we all know that that is a lot more demanding than just blind interpretation. So the question comes down to, how should I divide my attention between the speaker and Cymo Note? Admittedly, this is more of an art than a science, and you might have to experiment a little bit to find your perfect medium. But what I can do is share how I integrated Cymo Note into my interpretation work. At the very beginning, it is very normal to find yourself drawn to Cymo Note because everything is right there. It's very comforting. But remember what we talked about at the very beginning on what makes human interpretation better than machines, and that is our ability to convey emotion, our context awareness, and our capacity for narrative storytelling. And that is why I manage my attention to focus still on the speaker and only referring to Cymo Note when I hear a term that I'm not familiar with, and hopefully my preparation would have already caught that term. If not, I will add it to the glossary so it will be prompted in the future. Or if the speaker lets out maybe a series of numbers with units, then I can look at Cymo Note to check whether what I heard is correct. And what I discovered is that this allows me to move away from the source language structure and allow me to be a little bit more creative in terms of my interpretation. And there it is. That is how Cymo Note can help you during preparation, live interpretation, as well as post-project closeout, by helping you get prepared in less time, adapt faster, and craft a delivery that captivates your audiences. And that level of storytelling will always remain in the human domain. Cymo Note will not have become what it is today without all of your support. And that is why we welcome all of your questions and feedback. You can email me at marty.zoo@cymo.io or scan this QR code and speak with the entire team over WhatsApp. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Josh and Nora at Tech Forward. You guys are the vanguard leading the charge as we enter in this new domain. I, for one, am grateful for everything you have done for our industry. And lastly, I'd like to thank all of you. Despite significant uncertainties, you still choose to forge ahead and adapt to the new landscape. You guys are the protector as well as the future of our industry. Thank you for what you do. And with that, have a wonderful time at the summit.